This computer might be 11 years old, but it's not out of the game yet. 4th gen Intel processor, DDR3 RAM, no M2 slot, and a weak PSU. But we will make it game! This is the HP Z230 MicroTower. The Z230 came out in 2013. It was shortly followed by the Z240, which the 240 MicroTower is actually a really good budget gaming model that I've covered in the past. And it made a few important leaps forward. It has an M2 slot for the operating system and core applications, and some of the models have a power supply with a 6-pin PCIe connector that pairs really well with the GTX 1060, which is what I've done on my 240. Just straightforward, easy to assemble budget gaming. Our HP Z230 upgrade won't be quite so simple. We're dealing with older hardware, no M2 slot, and no PCIe power connectors. But there is one slight advantage with this older system. Hopefully. Instead of using the proprietary 6-pin and header connectors of the Z240, the power supply connects to the motherboard through an 18-pin connector. So with a simple 24-pin to 18-pin adapter, we should be able to run a fairly powerful PSU, which will in turn allow us to install a more powerful GPU. There are adapters for the Z240 as well. They're just a little strange since HP seemed to go extra proprietary with that model. Anyway, PSU adapters can be questionable, but since this is down power and a little more common, I think we'll be okay. On top of the PSU, there's another disadvantage we should be able to overcome, at least to some extent. The lack of an M2 slot. And we'll hopefully do that by using this device known as an HPZ Turbo Drive, which is essentially an M2 to PCIe adapter that we're going to install. Though there are some limits with this as well. There's a single Gen 3 PCIe slot on the board. This is where we'll install our GPU, but the other slots are all Gen 2. That's going to hold us back a bit with our M2, but it should still be faster than a 2.5-inch SATA drive. So with that being said, let's break this beast down and start with the upgrades. The first, arguably most important upgrade is the pool noodle intimidation phase. Just a reminder of what happens to disobedient PCs, and to fend off any potential Terminator invasions. Then we're on to the CPU. The Z230 can run 4th gen Intel i-series processors. I believe it can hold up to the i7-4790, but I don't have one of those around, so I'm going with the i7-4770. This is a 4-core, 8-thread processor that runs at 3.4 GHz base, 3.9 GHz turbo boost. As far as the RAM, we can run up to DDR3-1600. Unfortunately, I'm going to be limited to 16 gigabytes because I don't have a lot of DDR3 sticks around. Kind of sucks, but hopefully it'll get us where we need to be. Also, due to my lack of DDR3, I'm going to have to mix RAM brands, which is not desirable, but better than mixing RAM Rembrandts. We all know how that goes. Then we're on to installing the M2 drive through the adapter I mentioned earlier, as well as the GPU, in this case the GTX 1080 Ti. It's the best card I own at the moment, and I kind of want to see what this system can do. The drive is simple enough. Install the M2 SSD into the adapter, then drop the adapter into the system. The GPU should also be pretty quick. We're going to install that into the single Gen 3 16-lane slot. The other slots are all Gen 2. There's a header for the front panel connector here, which could cause some difficulty, but we'll either unplug that or just jam the GPU in there as hard as we can, which most technicians would agree is certainly a method. Even without too much trouble from the front panel connector, here's where we hit our main issue. We need additional PCIe connectors for this GPU, but the power supply sucks. Look at it. Just laying there without connectors. Look how smug it is. Disgusting. Alright, so I have a 24-pin to 18-pin adapter. I'm going to try to install that, and hopefully it'll allow us to run a newer, more powerful PSU with the aforementioned PCIe connectors. Removing the old supply is simple enough, but installing the new one might be tricky. This case wasn't really designed to work with anything other than the stock PSU, so I'll try to fit everything to the extent possible. Unfortunately, the bolt holes aren't going to align. It looks like I could drill new holes into the case without too much difficulty, but there's some metal flaps that kind of hold it in place, and it's just generally wedged in here enough that it actually will hold if I sit it upright. For the time being, I'm going to run the machine laying on its side just to be safe. Though, if I was so inclined, I don't think it would be too difficult to get this affixed in a more permanent way. But for now, I'm moving on. Alright, apparently this specific adapter isn't going to work. This is actually an adapter for the Z440, and it doesn't seem to be wired the same. I was going to implement my trick of using a secondary PSU and breakout board just to power the GPU, but I feel like that kind of breaks the spirit of this specific project. I've ordered another adapter that should get here soon, so allow Chair Desk to take you on a journey, moving through the very fabric of time itself. The adapter is in, the build is complete, and we have power. The power of Chair Desk. And sadly, the adapter is also not the end of my ordeal. Apparently, the Z230s are a lot more demanding about the kind of M2 you can use. I tried updating the BIOS, which failed every time, which caused me to furiously try different combinations of BIOS settings, but nothing seemed to work. The system would recognize the drive during setup and allow me to begin the install process, but then during boot up, it didn't even recognize that there was a drive available. So, in a completely calm manner, which you don't need to worry about, I tried several different M2 SSDs and tried sideloading those several different M2 SSDs until I could find one to sideload and swap that actually worked, which definitely sucks, and it's abundantly clear that the Z240 is worth the extra $20 or so. But again, we're going to keep pushing forward with this project. Alright, now I have Windows 10 running, and I'm going to install drivers and games and all the other stuff we need for testing. Hopefully. The way things are going, I might just rip my own head off instead. But let's jump into some gaming and get an idea of what this system can do. Okay, first we have our go-to, Doom Eternal. Everything we run will be at 1080p. This is a 2020 game running the highest in-game graphical settings. And I'm actually pretty surprised with the performance. It's hanging at a really consistent 140 plus FPS, almost constantly at 144, which is the maximum frame rate that my monitor can even handle. There's occasional dips of a frame or two, but it's hanging tough. It's a shame the system was so hard to set up because this older hardware is doing some serious work. I'm impressed. One other game I wanted to try is Trepang 2 or Trepang 2, just because it's newer. I believe it came out in 2023. Again, 1080p, highest in-game settings. And we aren't doing quite as well as Doom Eternal here, but the system is still going pretty strong. Most of the time we're rolling around 130 FPS. There are some dips happening, but they aren't extreme by any measure. I'll mention again that I had some serious issues setting this thing up, but we got there in the end, and for as old as it is, this machine can rock some budget gaming. Alright, that's all for this fiasco. Thank you for watching.